Hello again, and welcome to episode 4 of VAT Update from Tax Essentials for Advisors. In principle, we'll stick with our usual update structure, covering the latest developments in HMRC guidance and practice, notable case law, and other VAT news. However, this time there aren't any major HMRC changes to flag. Don't worry though, there are some really interesting cases to dig into. First up, we've got another first tier tribunal case on food. The question this time, are those biscuits really partly covered in chocolate? Next, there's a tribunal decision on an important point about importing goods when you don't actually own them. And finally, the Supreme Court has reached the end of the line in some long-running litigation. Are NHS car parking charges subject to VAT? In other news, budget speculation grows and we'll look at a potential taxi tax, which is already getting some attention in the national news. While I'd love to say that that is about more than pedantic arguments over cakes and biscuits, it feels like every other week we get another case on the quirks of zero rating for food. The Ferrero UK case has been on the radar for a while, but the decision was only recently published. Here's the story. The taxpayer manufactured Nutella biscuits, unsurprisingly biscuits filled with Nutella. If you don't know what Nutella is, I wouldn't want to be at your house on Pancake Day. It's basically a chocolatey hazelnut spread. Now, VAT legislation is fine with biscuits being zero rated, but it draws the line at biscuits partly covered in chocolate. In this case, the biscuits had a biscuit cup, definitely not chocolate, but there was a small chocolate ring visible from the outside. The tribunal decided that although the ring was visible between the two baked biscuit elements, it sat lower than the outer surface and didn't form part of that surface. So, the zero rate still applied. There's a serious point here. Picking the right VAT treatment for new and innovative food products is complex, and that's reinforced by the fact that these Nutella biscuits are incredibly similar to McVitie's Blissful biscuits, which were found to attract the opposite VAT treatment not so long ago. Back in 2019, HMRC published a revenue and customs brief restating what it called its long-standing policy: only the owner of imported goods can reclaim import VAT. The problem? This policy wasn't well publicised. Many businesses had been importing goods that they didn't own and recovering the VAT, often without challenge from HMRC. TSI Instruments was one of those businesses. It imported goods owned by customers of the wider TSI group for repair and servicing in the UK. Ownership stayed with the customers, but TSI was named as the importer. It paid the import VAT and for years recovered that VAT without question. Eventually, HMRC challenged this, and the tribunal sided with HMRC. The reasoning? TSI didn't own the goods, and their value wasn't reflected in the price of TSI's services, so TSI wasn't entitled to recover the import VAT. This policy has created real headaches for businesses involved in contract manufacturing, repairs, and servicing. If you work with a business that imports goods it doesn't own, it's worth reviewing the VAT position urgently. The consequences of getting this wrong can be severe. It would be remiss not to mention a VAT case that's reached the Supreme Court. In a post-Brexit UK, a Supreme Court judgment really is the final word on a VAT dispute. This is long-running litigation that's been closely watched by NHS trusts and other public bodies. The question? Whether income from NHS car parking should be subject to VAT or treated as non-business and therefore outside the scope of VAT. Special VAT rules apply to public bodies. And broadly, if a public body acts under something called a special legal regime, its income can be treated as non-business, meaning no VAT, provided that doing so wouldn't cause significant distortions of competition. The taxpayer had successfully argued for non-business treatment at the Court of Appeal, but the Supreme Court has now overturned that decision. It held that car parking wasn't provided under a special legal regime and that non-business treatment would distort competition. This is an important and disappointing outcome for NHS trusts, but it's also a case that other public bodies will be studying carefully for its potential wider impact on how their activities are treated for VAT. Finally, in other news, a quick word on the rumours of a taxi tax that you may have seen circulating in the national press. The VAT treatment of the private hire sector is complex, and historically, many operators have sought to use an agency model when providing taxi services to private consumers. The effect of this model is that VAT does not need to be accounted for on amounts payable to self-employed drivers operating below the VAT registration threshold. Legal challenges in certain circumstances have led to operators like Bolt and Uber seeking instead to rely on a VAT scheme called the Tour Operators Margin Scheme, so that they broadly only need to account for VAT on their profit margin. This has been subject to ongoing VAT litigation in Bolt, which HMRC has been granted permission to appeal to the Court of Appeal. Given all of this landscape of complexity, uncertainty and potential differential treatment in different parts of the UK, the government launched a consultation in April 2024 on potential changes to the VAT rules for the private hire sector. We are still awaiting a response to that consultation, which may well come as part of the budget. Speculation is rife that the budget could contain a solution branded as a taxi tax, where essentially all private hire journeys become subject to VAT on the full amount paid by the customer. That would be massive for the sector and could have a knock-on effect on taxi prices for many of us. It's definitely one to watch out for on the 26th of November. And that's the end of another VAT update. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to presenting a further update in a couple of weeks' time.
Just a quick reminder that our next webinar is on VAT in the construction industry. Our in-house tax specialists, Andy and Rachel, will be speaking to Neil Warren, leading VAT expert, about the practicalities of advising clients in this area. The webinar will be held at 1 p.m. on Thursday the 13th of November. You can secure your place by using the link shown here.